Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Top 5 edition of Magic Mike's, proudly sponsored by our Patreon supporters and CoolStuffInc.com, where you can find cool stuff in stock every day. Use promo code MagicMikes to get 5% off anything in that store. And check out our co-sponsor, Mana Traders, the best tool to enhance your Magic Online experience. Use the code MagicMikes_8N48 in November 4 for 10% off your next subscription with Mana Traders. Tell them we sent you. My name is Evan Irwin, and we get started each week by saying hello to my two co-hosts, Power Dragon.
What's up, everybody? Modern Horizons 3 is just dumb. Like, that's all. Just dumb.
It's built to be dumb. They got there. Ruben Bressler.
And the commander decks are also dumb. And I had to twist some arms, but I think that we got there. We found at least 5 cards. I was more excited for the commander cards, quite honestly, than the rest of the set. So that's why I really wanted to talk about our top 5 Modern Horizons 3 commander cards.
Yeah, these cards are neat. They also did premium versions of the decks this time.
Yeah.
Which was, and they're holding their value at like $800 for a set. So they'll probably do them again.
And if you play Arena, some of these cards will appear in your drafts. Which was weird. When I first opened up a pack and I saw Ioti Moag Ancient.
Really?
And I was like, why is this? Yeah, I have this 2/4 for 4 in my draft. That might have only been during the early access events, but I definitely had one.
Right? I mean, I believe you. They've done the commander cards, like the face commanders, as part of the battle pass thing that they had. That you would get four copies of them as you unlock them or whatever. Excuse me.
Interesting. Okay.
But I've not seen them in packs? Question mark.
I mean, I haven't seen any of the The only one I saw in a pack was the blue-green alternate commander.
Which
was strange.
Yeah, I mean, rest assured, it's silly and it's pushed and it's supposed to be, and that's super fun. And we begin with our choice of the top comment from the last top 10 in a segment we call Honorable Mention, where Ruben will tell us who was the most eloquent and letting us know what card we did not choose as one of our top 10 Modern Horizons 3 cards. Ruben?
Well, little egg on my face. I assumed that this card would be on somebody else's list. It is one of the Chase Mythics. It is one of the headliners. Cole McWillis writes, I can't believe you didn't talk about Ulamog the Defiler. Yes, he may not make as many splashes in Modern, but the potential at kitchen tables is crazy. Just think of exiling your opponent's Gleemax, so he enters with 1 million +1/+1 counters for Annihilator 1 million. Oh, and you should have noticed how well Springheart Antuco works with Ocelot Pride, as they're both in the top 10, which was just a note with our previous work.
Yeah,
like, I don't have a problem with Ulamog. I was kind of just avoiding the Eldrazi, because we kind of know the big Eldrazi are ridiculous.
Right.
So I just didn't have them on my list.
Well, I got them up on the screen right now. Ulamog the Defiler is a 10 generic mana, mythic 7/7 legendary Eldrazi. When you cast a spell, target opponent exiles half their library rounded up. It has Ward of Sacrifice 2 permanents. Okay. Ulamog the Defiler enters the battlefield with a number of +1/+1 counters on it equal to the greatest mana value among cards in exile. Ulamog has Annihilator X, where X is the number of +1/+1 counters on it. This card is bananas. Like, to be clear. Ridiculous.
Yeah.
But,
cards
all the big Elder Eldrazi are, though. Like, we'd almost be surprised if we got one that wasn't.
Yeah. Right. I mean, your highest mana cost, probably 7 or 8. I mean, again, you're turning over like 40 cards or something in Commander. So, yeah. And then at that point, you Annihilator X, so Annihilator 8 or whatever. Like, good God. Let's get this thing and show it now.
Just 4.
Yeah. Get it stuck out of the play.
3. You know,
it's not a cast trigger. It's an enters the battlefield trigger. To be clear.
Mm-hmm.
So, reanimate. Let's go.
Also works.
Yeah. Doesn't have that weird shuffle if it goes to your graveyard, whatever. Nope. All gas, no brakes. This card is fantastic. Thank you so much for Colonel McWillis for being a part of the show. And congrats to them. Stay around for our top 5 list this week and let us know what your choice of the honorable mention should be or could be as we move in here to our top 5. So this was neat. We didn't choose 10 because there's not that many cards. I mean, there's a bunch of reprints, obviously, and there's 60 new cards, which are nice. And I chose mine from there. And Power Dragon said you had mentioned you chose a reprint.
I have a single reprint.
But I'm sure it's important. So let's go ahead and get started with our number 5. Ruben, what's number 5?
My number five is one of the goofiest looking cards I've ever seen. It is also extremely powerful, even without one of the lines of text. But then one of the lines of text that it has is just incredible. I'm talking about Rampant Frogantua. Rampant Frogantua is 2 generic into green for a 3/3 frog with trample. And it says Rampant Frogantua gets +10/+10 for each player who has lost the game. So if you're playing in a 4-player commander pod and one of those players has been knocked out, this is already a 13/13. It's already pretty good as a 3/3 trample for 3 because whenever Rampant Frogantua deals combat damage to a player, you may mill that many cards. Put any number of land cards from among them onto the battlefield tapped. So we have a card called Six in the main set that does, mills 3 and gets you some lands, has some other abilities, but this effect, this is like a World Waker or a World Shaper kind of effect. Pretty powerful stuff. All in a 3/3 for 3, easily splashable, easily playable kind of package.
Yeah, this is pretty cool. Even if you're, because now we have like I guess a Lurgoyf Lord, if you will, the commander. Like this fits perfectly into that build, just milling extra cards. Like there's a lot of different decks that want to put stuff in their graveyard that'll want this card. It's actually pretty sweet.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that it has trample just kind of ties the whole room together because you want it to be a 33-33, or whatever, which when 3 people are dead, but when 2 people are dead, it's a 23-23, and that's going to end the game pretty freaking quickly, I'd hope. And I love weird mechanics that you would only see, like, for each player who has lost the game. Us competitive people are like, what are you talking about? There's only one person who loses the game, that's it.
That's right.
Yeah, no, not in Commander. The hits keep coming, and that's pretty dope. Power Dragon, what's number 5?
My number 5 is a land. It's a gate even, but Talon Gates of Madara. This is it enters the battlefield up to 1 target creature phases out, which doesn't sound crazy till you realize one of the lines of text is pay for colorless, put it from your hand onto the battlefield. And it happens to also tap for a waste mana, and you can pay 1 and tap it to get a mana of any color. So any deck can effectively play this and not have it be a wasted card because you can just filter mana to be something else. But it gives every deck a way to save a creature at colorless, basically at instant speed. Like this is a pretty cool card. Honestly, I expect to see this in a lot of commander decks.
It can fit in all of them.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
All of them. Every single one. And it's active both defensively and offensively. Like, oh, that's a nice Ulamog you got there. No thanks. Phase that out. I got a whole turn or multiple people's turns before that ever comes back into play to start with. And you could just, do it whenever you want. That's kind of incredible.
And it magically doesn't say target creature you control.
Right.
It just says target creature.
You can get rid of a blocker.
Yep.
Yeah. Card's sick. Worth $1 million right now, but we'll see.
Card's absurd. I mean, it does have the Painted Bluffs Crystal Grotto thing on it, but the big headliner is that come into play ability and the fact that it ramps, right?
Yep.
It allows you to put a land from your hand onto the battlefield, which is absolutely insane.
Yeah, it does just like it does like 3 facets of awesome on this card. It's actually incredible.
It's very cool.
One of the reasons it's the most expensive right now in the set. I'm not super surprised. So let me tell you, y'all. Once upon a time, now going on 15 years, God help me. And you can find this on this very YouTube channel if you go back far enough and look at the Honolulu episodes of the Magic Show. Once upon a time, I asked a question. I said, "Here's the question." 2 forest, 2 mountain, 2 swamp, Broodmate Dragon. In limited, do you keep that hand or not? And I got to get all the opinions, from Randy Bueller to Chapin, everybody was awesome, to what that meant. Should you or shouldn't you? A lot of people said yes, a lot of people said mole. It was really fun. And so the follow-up to that, to pay homage is Broodmate Tyrant. Broodmate Tyrant is a red,
Yeah.
black, and green and 4 generic mana for a rare dragon. It's a 5/5 flyer. When it enters the battlefield, you create a 5/5 red dragon creature token with flying, and it has Encore for a green, red, a black, and 5 generic mana. So for 8 mana, you exile the card from your graveyard. For each opponent, you make a token copy that attacks that opponent this turn if able. They gain haste, sacrifice them at the beginning of the next end step, only as a sorcery. So you're going to get a whole bunch of 5/5 flyers and one more attacking at the same time. And yeah, this card just checks all those crazy boxes while also being a really cool dragon, while also harkening back to a really awesome, one of I think my best segments I ever did at the Pro Tour for the Magic Show.
Man, this thing is just ridiculous. Like, now, admittedly, it is 7 mana, so you're not going to be playing this in competitive Commander, but you're playing any type of mid-rangey Commander games. 7 mana to get 2 dudes and then possibly get an additional creature later, or have a potential finisher for 2 opponents, maybe. Right? There's a lot of stuff going on with this card.
Yeah. Also harkens back directly to Karthus, which was the Tyrant of Jund, has the same casting cost and is even referenced in the flavor text. You get 2 5/5s the first time around, and then you encore and you get 3 more in Commander, basically. Which is not, well, technically you get 6, but then 3 of them die.
Sure.
So a really, really excellent card. This is the kind of giant Timmy dragon that you want to see.
Bring those dragon tokens. You're going to need them. As we move on here to our number 4. Ruben, what's number 4?
My number 4 is a card that I am probably highly valuing because of who I live with. My roommate, Emmett, hi Emmett, if you're watching this, has a bunch of Commander decks, and he loves Commander, and one of his decks is a Deserts deck, a Deserts Matter deck. And Desert Warfare is in this Commander expansion, and it is the best thing that you could possibly put into a Desert deck. And it's not close. This is a piece that has been missing. Desert Warfare is 3 generic and a green enchantment. Whenever it has 2 abilities, whenever you sacrifice a desert, and whenever a desert is put into your graveyard from your hand or library, put that card onto the battlefield under your control at the beginning of the next end step. Pretty good with the frog, for example. And at the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control 5 or more deserts, create that many 1/1 red, green, and white sand warrior creature tokens. They gain haste. Those are the same tokens that Hazazon makes. And so they get all of the same kind of awesome buffs that you can make in a Hazazon deck. So if you're playing a Yuma Proud Protector deck or a Hazazon deck, this is exactly what the doctor ordered. This is a very silly card. Anytime you sacrifice or mill or discard a desert, which you do a ton of in this deck, it comes immediately back. And if you just have 5 of the thing that your deck is built around in play, you get even more Sand Warriors than you otherwise would.
Man, I gotta go buy stocks in Land's Edge. Like, being able to just discard some land, steal some damage, and they come back to deal more damage, and I get dudes for them. Like, yeah, sign me up, dude.
It's doing
That's
a lot
awesome.
of things with deserts, man. That's
a lot.
I mean, you're making, first of all, you're making minimum 5 tokens, which is nuts. Also, they're hasty because reasons. Like, why not?
Yeah, exactly. Just because.
Because why not, right? Like, just crazy.
And just in case you've never played against, or with a Hazazon deck in Commander, let's go through a couple of the things that we can do with those tokens. Coat of Arms, right? Coat of Arms is an easy one. There is a creature from Alara that says creatures get +1/+1 for each color they have. So all your 1/1s become 4/4s, right? You can do any number of sacrifice shenanigans. There's so much that you can do in this deck with, and then of course,
Monument if you want them to fly.
There you go, Eldrazi Monument, Jetmir, Nexus of Revels. Like, you can make the 1/1s super scary, super fast.
Yeah, I love stuff like that. That's great. All right, my 4 is higher on someone else's list, but Power Dragon, what is your number 4?
My number 4, this is my reprint that I decided to include because I have played with this card in a couple of decks, and every single time it's been the most fun card in the deck. And before this, it was going for about $20. I think now the old ones are still going for about $15. But Apex Devastator. It's a 10 mana, so 8 colorless green green. It's a Hydra, but it has one of the best text boxes ever. It's just Cascade, 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 Cascade. That's 4 of them. And when it costs 10, you get some mighty big things out of your library. This is awesome. Like it's a 10/10 on top of that. Doesn't have trample, but not that it needs it when you're getting 4 free spells for your 10 mana. Like this thing's always a blast to play. I get so many dumb board states from this card. It's cool to see that it's reprinted and getting a little more affordable for people.
I mean, I got to have the extended art where it just says Cascade 4 times, which is on the screen
Yeah.
right now. It just says Cascade, Cascade, Cascade. What's your favorite, dish detergent? It's Cascade.
Yep.
That's right. Yeah, I love this card. There was a card in the WoW TCG that had, I think, 10 instances of the same ability.
Jesus.
And it wrote them all out. It was like word, comma, word, comma, word, comma, word. And that was, 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, man, that is such a clean, fun, kind of like rules text as flavor text situation. And finally we got Apex Devastator. And we have that now. Like I really want other keywords that stack. Things like exalted, 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 exalted would be very fun. Those abilities all stacked together they sound so cool. And Apex Devastator is the top of the food chain when it comes to that.
Well, let me tell you, in the Modern Horizons 3 limited play during the preview day there, I got to definitely play with the card that you spend energy to put exalted counters on stuff and then proliferate those counters.
Right.
And
Yep.
Yeah.
it was crazy and so much fun. So I did get the exalted experience. All right, so let's move on here to number 3. And I'll go ahead and kick it off because I had number 4 that was higher, which is, again, kind of incredible. So number 3, this card is like just weird. This card was like, okay, first, I'm looking through, I'm sorting by different ways. I'm just checking out all the cards so I can read them and know what they do. Sorting them by EDA, sorting them by price, yada yada. And I start reading this card. And I'm like, why is this card so high up on the thing? And I'm reading on it. I'm like, well, wait a minute. Does that do what I think it did? Like I read it, I thought about it. I read it again. I thought about it some more, and I was, wait a minute. And I was like, no, there's nothing bad here. This is all just one giant scary monster that you make with benthic anomaly. This thing is ridiculous. It's a blue and 6 generic mana. So 7 mana. You're in for the full boat. It's a 7/8 devoid rare Eldrazi Servant. Sure. So 7 mana, 7/8, whatever. Here's the good stuff. When you cast this spell, know what you do have to cast it. When you cast this spell for each opponent, choose a creature that player controls. Create a token that's a copy of one of those creatures, except its power is equal to the total power of those creatures, and its toughness is equal to the total toughness of those creatures, and it's a colorless Eldrazi creature, which means it's going to trigger all your cool colorless stuff if you have things that care about that. But Mother of God, you just add all the numbers together to make a super duper version of whatever crazy thing is on the board right now.
Yeah, it's like
Wow.
a weird Voltron where you're assembling their creatures.
Yeah.
like I want your 5/5, your 7/7, your 8/8, and then I just get this giant ridiculous like 20 some power dude. Like crazy.
Yeah. That's like a mimeoplasm for your opponent's board. That's crazy.
Not only that, it's not just big, you also get to be a copy of one of them.
Right.
So like you get
one
their
of the
extra
things-
abilities in text box while being a giant body.
Right. So I'll make a 30/30 Seedborn Muse.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure. I mean,
That's cool.
card is wild, just ridiculous. So yeah, that's why
I like
it's
it.
expensive and silly and weird.
Yeah.
And high up on people's lists.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I love it. All right, Ruben, what's number 3?
My number 3 is the face commander for one of the decks, and it opens up an avenue of play I've never seen before. It is extremely powerful on its own, and it enables perhaps the greatest token or the greatest counter of all time, and that's Omo, Queen of Vesuva. Omo, Queen of Vesuva is 2 generic and a green-blue hybrid, so either a green or a blue. One of the easiest to cast commanders you'll ever see in your life. It's a 1/5 legendary creature, Shapeshifter Noble. She is, of course, the Queen of Vesuva. When Omo, Queen of Vesuva, enters the battlefield or attacks, put an everything counter on each of up to 1 target land and up to 1 target creature. While she's in play, each land with an everything counter on it has every land type in addition to its other types. And every non-land creature with an everything counter on it is every creature type. So, Ruben, I hear you ask, what can I do with this? Well, we can play a bunch of basics and one cloud post and turn all of our basics into locuses, and then our cloud post taps for a bunch. We can turn our Urza's Tower into an everything, and now it's both it's an Urza's Tower, power plant, and mine, and we don't need anything else. What about the creature side? Well, it's an everything creature, so it's a changeling. So all of the cool Lord effects affect our new creature. All of the sliver buffs that are on the board, all of the merfolk buffs that are on the board, whatever it is that you're jamming your deck full of, it all combines together. There's other weird corner cases of being able to move the counters around also. And the everything counters themselves, you can 3D print or cry cut some bagels. You can go get some bagels and put them on your creatures.
Hey, they sell you can get little things of everything bagel seasoning. You put little packets on all your cards.
Little bagel seasoning on your Omo. Yep. I like it.
Little bagel chips, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I play my Omo. My Plains is now an everything bagel. And pass the turn.
I'll say this, though, for the card, from the way it's designed, it's correctly done to where it's cheap to cast, so you have time to build up the counters, right? Because a lot of other commanders or face commanders is like, okay, it comes into play, now next turn you have this really big ability or thing you can do. This is one that you kind of do need at least 3 turns of like placing some counters and getting some cards to make those counters matter. So this is actually a pretty sweet card from a design standpoint.
I appreciate it's got a big old butt on it for that very reason. Yeah. It's difficult to burn out and just straight up get rid of immediately. Or if you do, it's easy to recast, which is nice. I appreciate the fact that this is going to be on Arena and or is on Arena right now and so on, which is great because you can play it in Brawl and in Timeless if you want to. And yeah, I mean, everything counters are just awesome. Like, nothing wrong with everything counter. It's kind of sucks that she has to be on the battlefield for those things to matter, but I'm also okay with that. And makes a lot of sense.
Like you can get rid of it. You can get rid of her mid combat to get rid of some of the buffs that are going on.
Right, some of the effects, which is the whole thing. Power Dragon, what's number 3?
This one's a card that, if you like playing politics, these are the type of cards you enjoy having access to. But Sawhorn Nemesis, it's a 3 colorless and a red for a 2/4 dinosaur, which we already saw recently. Dinosaur cards already going ridiculous with the last dinosaur commander deck. So, you know, one more thing they get to play. But as it enters the battlefield, you choose a player. And then if a source would deal damage to the chosen player or permanents they control, it deals double that damage instead. You get a lot of control over king making with this type of card, or possibly eliminating somebody, right? You can use it as a threat to get somebody to do something else. Maybe if somebody's like, I can't quite kill them and they're about to go off next turn, I only can get through like 6 damage. You're like, well, what if I could make it 12? Like, there's a lot you could do with this card. And it's pretty easy to cast. A mid-sized body as a 2/4. But yeah, this could potentially, or if you just want to use it aggressively yourself, could just end the game, especially since you have tramplers and whatnot playing dinosaurs.
I feel you have to, first of all, this is my number 4 because I think it's brilliant. I love anything, like when it comes to Commander, the most appealing part to me is the politics. Like, I do think that's cool about the alliances and who, like, when do you kind of betray so you can actually win the game and so on. And this is also one of those cards that I feel like you got to be a little careful with, or you won't be invited back to game night because, like, you made everybody really mad and you just pissed them off and like, oh, that person's dead now. Let's blink this and now it's you. You know what I mean? Like, stop. You're like, get some help. Like,
resetting it mid-combat sounds awesome. That's cool. I like that.
Dude, you can mess people up hard. And sometimes that really makes enemies. So
you can also make copies of this and quadruple or octuple.
Oh my Jesus.
There's a card called Blast Furnace Hellkite that came out in the Brothers War Commander decks, and it says that creatures attacking your opponents have double strike. This is half the cost, albeit Blast Furnace Hellkite had affinity. This is half the cost, and it's all sources.
Yeah.
So this is a really powerful effect to be on something that is only 4 mana.
Yeah. This card made both of our lists for a reason, I think, and it's just really impressive. You know, I mean, like it's pushed.
Yeah, it can be paired with a lot of things to do a bunch of damage. There's even an old card that I believe it's like if something attacks your opponents, each of those creatures gets +2/+0 or something. Like there's a bunch of crazy stuff you can put with this to really have it go off.
All right, let's move on here to number 2, and I kicked off number 3, so I'll kick this one off as well. I believe this is one of the face commanders, if I recall correctly. It's wild. It's crazy. It introduced a brand new mana symbol. Like when they do stuff like this, when they make new mana symbols, like as a retailer, we gotta do a bunch of programming work. We gotta go and get these images in the back end so we can show you this card how it's supposed to be. Because suddenly we now have colorless/colored mana as hybrids, and that had never happened before until Ulalek fused Atrocity. This is, you know, depending on how far you want to go, you could go the full-blown rainbow, everything's overpowered, or you could go the colorless, and it's all about Eldrazi, and it should be for the reasons we're getting to. So it is 5 mana Wooburg, or 5 colorless mana. So you can either choose colorless mana or colored mana to play it, which is kind of amazing. So for that 5 mana, it is a 2/5 legendary Eldrazi. It is devoid, and whenever you cast an Eldrazi spell, you may pay 2 colorless mana. That is 2 Wingdings. If you do, copy all spells that you control, and which is a whole thing. Then copy all other activated and triggered abilities you control. You may choose new targets for the copies. Mana abilities cannot be copied, but every cast trigger, all the inner battlefield, whatever stuff, just like. It's nuts, and if you like play with it enough, you can copy instants and things. Like Lord knows you're going to have a lot of mana, but whatever, it's Commander. But like this is the type of card where I'm just like, damn, I just want to build this deck and just do something weird with this card.
Dude, not just triggered abilities you get from casting stuff. There's some spells that are just Eldrazi spells that you get to copy. Like there's a lot of silliness this card can lead to for sure. For just 2 additional mana, like Kicker 2, get whatever extra ability, basically.
There's also a really odd corner case where if you play an Eldrazi with Flash or you play an instant Eldrazi spell, you don't just copy the Eldrazi spells and abilities that are on the stack. You copy all of the things that are on the stack. So you can respond to your own spell with, like a Prodigal Sorcerer trigger and copy it. Or whatever other triggers you have sitting around the battlefield. It is an extremely powerful card to be only 5 mana, and it is very, very good.
And it's it's going to be on Brawl and Timeless, so let's go.
Very exciting. 5 colorless waste mana at that, right?
Yeah.
That's the crazy part.
My only concern whenever I see a card like this, which has a lot of potential and should be really interesting, is that I can throw you in the hell queue. Because a lot of what you're going to be playing is really powerful and kind of ridiculous, and depending on which way you go, and yada, yada, yada. All right, so let's move on here to Ruben's number 2. What you got?
My number 2 is the one higher that I have on somebody else's list.
Oh, really?
Very cool.
Okay.
Yep, I have a higher.
Power Dragon, what's your number 3?
All right. I put this one on the list because generally the copy effect spells in red are just kind of okay. And a lot of times you play them defensively to just maybe counter a counter or, redirect something crazy. But it's usually like a 1-for-1. Not necessarily great, but hey, Fork's still a thing. But now we have Tempt with Mayhem, which the Tempt spells are already good. But this is a colorless red instant. And you get to offer all your opponents a thing. So you choose target instant or sorcery spell. Each opponent may copy that spell and may choose new targets for the copy. You can copy that spell once, plus an additional time for each opponent who decided to copy the spell this way. And then you get to choose new copies for everything. So if they go to, say, kill something, you can be like, you know what? I also want to kill something. Do each of you want to kill an additional thing? Great. I get to kill 3 more things.
Yeah.
This card's so much ridiculous fun because it puts your opponents really kind of just in the blender of it's like,
right.
I kind of want to get rid of this other thing you have, but then I'm also going to lose an additional thing, and this kind of sucks. So like, I like the decision making that this provides. This is a cool card, and it's pretty affordable at around $3 right now if you want one.
So I'm gaming this out. Let's say I'm playing a four-player commander game. My opponent plays a spell that I want, and I tempt with Mayhem it. Then each of my three opponents are tempted. So I get
Mm-hmm.
four copies of the spell.
If they
The
all
original
chose to.
caster gets two
Yep.
copies of the spell, and each other player gets one copy of the spell.
Yep.
Yep.
That's a lot of Doomblades. That's a
Yeah.
lot of that's a lot of divinations.
That's a lot of
That's a,
card drawing and life gaining and whatever. Because, you know, somebody's like, hey, during your end step, I'm going to draw 3 cards.
right.
Cool. I want 3 cards. Anybody else want 3 cards? Great. I want 12
Also
cards. That
Cyclonic
sounds even
Rift,
better.
or any of those like uh super powerful middle of the game kind of commander cards for sure.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Wizards has just learned that, and this is it took a very long time, I think, in many ways, to just recognize that copying spells is not a big of a deal. And
Mhm.
they've just kept pushing them, pushing them, pushing them, and we gotten to the point where it's like, well, everyone gets a copy, and then you get extra copies, and then you get even copies of those copies, and
Oh, I love this one because even from a design standpoint, it's up to the players to decide if it's worth it or not. Right?
yeah,
Like you might just go, cool, you get to copy it and kill a thing, and that's it. I don't want
Yeah.
nothing. Like I don't want any of that smoke. You just kill the one thing you get to kill.
Right.
it's a wonderful name because tempt with mayhem is indeed tempting.
It
Oh
is.
yeah.
You ready to get this party started? You know what I'm saying? That's this kind of card. I think it's dope. All right, let's move on here to our number one Power Dragon. What is your number one?
My number one is a card that I don't even think needed to exist, but it does, and it's going to be expensive for a long time because it's more Eldrazi stupidity. But Eldritch Immunity.
Yep.
For a whole one colorless waste mana, you get to give something protection from each color until end of turn. And then if you decide to pay 5 mana, all your things get protection from every color. And it's an instance that happens to also be an Eldrazi spell. Yeah, it's dumb. Like really damn good. I don't know why we had to give this to the Eldrazi with all the other ridiculousness they got in this set between the core set and the commander decks, but here it is, and this card's really good.
Yeah. This was my number two.
Nice.
This card's absurd. And you enumerated several of the reasons why. It is also, don't underestimate, a kindred instant Eldrazi.
Hmm.
So, and it's one wingding, it's one mana. So this will trigger your Ulalek with everything else on the stack
Yep.
if you really want it to. Or you can protect everything on your board from some sort of, like a chain reaction or a blasphemous act or something like that. Or you can attack and kill your opponents with your overload. This card is absurd, just absolutely incredible.
I'll be interested to see if enough decks start playing more waste or things that produce that mana to be able to play cards like this. Because this, like you're saying, just even on an attack, you're just like, great, you can't block
Yeah.
anything.
I mean, the
Like,
new tricolor sack lands in the set
Mm-hmm.
are absolutely terrific. I mean, if you
yeah,
need the
For sure.
colored mana, you can go find it. But if you don't, right here, easy peasy. And the fact that it gives them protection from color, it's not like hexproof from color or whatever. No,
yep.
it's the pure pro. They can't block, they can't deal damage, they can't do nothing. That's just really scary, and I can see how it made both y'all's lists. Ruben, what's number one?
My number one is a card that is a simple card in theory and has a lot of application in practice. And it is in the same deck as Omo, but it is much more powerful because it doesn't depend on the everything counter itself. And that means that it's going to have a wider impact in the older formats. I'm talking about Planar Nexus.
Mm,
Planar Nexus is a land that is every basic land type. Non-basic land types include cave, desert, gate, lair, locust, mine, power plant, sphere, tower, and Urzas. It taps for a colorless, and it has the painted bluffs thing of pay a generic and tap it to add 1 mana of any color. So, what are the most common applications of this card? Well, 12 post in Legacy is going to be 16 or 20 post. We did get another post called Trench Post
Mhm.
that is another locus. And you want to have a critical mass of locuses for Glimmer Post to gain life and Cloud Post to add mana. Planar Nexus is another of those. It is an untapped gate for gate decks in Commander. and older formats if you happen to be playing those. It itself is a Urza's Mine, Urza's Tower, and Urza's Power Plant to be able to play on turn 2 with your first turn Urza's Land. So there are a number of different things that can be done here. Primarily, the locus is the scariest thing for older formats, but because it itself is effectively a changeling for lands, there's a lot that it can do now, and going forward into the future, it's only going to get better.
Yeah,
You
turn
know, though,
one.
like
Go ahead.
a lot of the caves, deserts, they're 3 and 4 color decks. So having another card that counts to trigger a lot of that stuff that can also filter mana is really good for those types of decks. Like
Mhm.
this could be filler in a lot of different decks to kind of just give you that extra land that helps you get across without having to play a non-theme land for whatever it is you're trying to do.
Yeah, this thing is, I mean, just straight pushed. I don't know how else to kind of say it. I mean, if you do the Locust thing, turn one, Cloud Post, turn two, play this, tap for 4 mana, like, and then you just go up from there, which is awesome. It fixes a lot of weird problems like the Urza's thing to have, like, basically 4 extra copies of every single one of those Urza lands, or however you want to do the math. Yeah, this card is sweet and interesting and unique and wild, and I can see how it made your number one. Card's cool. For my number one, as I pulled it up here on the screen, you guys can check it out. Look, man, I was there. All right, I was there. I was there when a card it shows up. I was there when a card is taken for granted / not recognized as how powerful it could be, underrated, if you will. I was there when it took off and people realized, oh my God, this is like the greatest thing ever. I was there when I went to my first pro tour, and the first question I asked everyone I met was, is this card too good? Is this card worth banning? And that card was Tarmogoyf. And now we have a kindred enchantment of all the things. A kindred enchantment that makes tokens of this card that used to be hundreds of dollars a piece. And now the token is probably going to be worth more than the card itself because of rarity or whatever. Tarmogoyf Nest is my number one. Tarmogoyf Nest is a green and 2 generic mana for a rare kindred enchantment, Lurgoyf Aura, with enchant land. An enchanted land has 1 green, 1 generic, tap, create a Tarmogoyf token, and that is a token that has a mana cost. That's how hardcore they want this to be. And yes, because it's weird, this token's mana cost is 1 green and a generic down here in the bottom because it's going to look too much like a magic card and blah, 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 blah. Whatever. It's just ridiculous. If anything, I would note, I think this is a huge trend. We are going to see a ton more of this. We're going to see Baneslayer Angel tokens. You know what I'm saying? We're going to see Arcbound Ravager tokens. Like, there's going to be ways to just keep going and rolling all of this stupid crap. These really powerful creatures that have either gotten kind of left behind or kind of forgotten about. Well, if you can make a bunch of tokens of them, that's really awesome. So, yeah, this to go from Tarmogoyf came out in a Magic booster pack that I was buying and opening and playing in limited at the time, to it become like a literal cultural phenomenon in Magic, to one of the greatest creatures and or the best creature for many years, to now being completely dethroned thanks to Fatal Push and Friends, to the point where it is just made as a token. That's where we're at. That's my number.
Yeah, this set of Commander also has just a Lurgoyf sub thing, right?
Yeah.
Well, there's a red one that like deals damage equal to power of the Lurgoyf when it comes into play or whatever. There's a Lurgoyf face card, I think, a legendary creature that has something to do with Lurgoyfs. Like
Yep.
we've done all. Oh, there's the one Lurgoyf that has like Myriad. When it attacks, you get extra Lurgoyf copies. Like there's all kinds of stuff in the set, and this is right up there with them. I mean, being able to effectively, in a lot of cases, make for 2 mana a 4+ power creature, probably 5+ most of the time in most commander games, is really, really strong. And not counting if you get to untap it with like Seedborn Muse or any of the other silliness that goes on.
Like,
Yeah, absolutely absurd. Being able to make a token makes it so that you can copy tokens and populate with them also,
Mm-hmm.
in addition to just being, a size. If you play multiple copies, being a kindred enchantment will pump up your other Tarmogoyfs that are already in play. And hey, if you can't beat the Goblin Shaman from Fable of the Mirror Breaker, might as well join them and become the thing. become the token if you can't beat them.
Like, I could have chosen Disa the Restless, because
Right.
whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, you make a Tarmogoyf token. So like that's a different angle, I think. But I just wanted to keep it simple, and that like we've made a card that makes a token of one of the greatest, most heralded cards ever made in history of Magic. And again, this to me is like just the beginning, and this is part of a new design sort of era of where they're able to make tokens with mana cost, because we've seen that from Bloomburrow that's been previewed so far, and two, the fact that there are these classic creatures that we know what they are. So when you make a Tarmogoyf token, we know what it is. You know, when you make a Platinum Angel token, we know what it is. You know what I mean? There's certain cards that are iconic enough that I think it'd be really rad to start making token copies of them.
I'm looking forward to the time we get to actually play against a full-on Largoyf deck. Like, that's going to be fun to sit across the table from.
Yeah.
It's getting there. All right, so let's take a look here real fast. Need to not used to the exact procedures these days when we're lacking our wonderful editors. But that said, I'm going to go ahead and bring up on the screen our chosen top 5. This set was really fun. You know, even if it was a smaller commander set. You know,
there's
I think
a lot.
made most of it.
For sure. They packed a lot of power and a lot of excitement into just this, like you said, the 60 cards, the 60 new cards, plus a bunch of reprints. Really interesting theming for the set.
There you go. So you will see on the screen right now our top 5 Modern Horizons 3 Commander cards. Take a look at my list, Power Dragon's list, Ruben's top 5. We want to hear from you about a card we did not talk about. And we'll select our favorite to highlight during our next top 10 or top 5. Before we go, I want to thank my co-host. Thank you, Power Dragon.
Hey, as always, good to be here. Don't forget to leave us a good review, leave us a comment, give us the 5 stars, all that fun stuff.
We'd appreciate it. Thank you, Ruben.
Hey, thanks, guys, and we'll see you next time.
We'll move on here to our final slide. I want to thank our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, our co-sponsor, ManaTraders.com, my co-host, Power Dragon, and Ruben Bressler. You guys for watching and listening. I hope you support us at Patreon.com/MagicMikes. Follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe to everything social that tells people we exist. Catch us online at Twitch.tv at Magic Mikes, on Twitter at Magic Mikes Cast, our Magic Mikes subreddit, and like the Magic Mikes page on Facebook. Join us here next week, same time, same place, for another episode of Magic Mikes. Good night, everybody.